Welcome to Engedrian. If this is your first time listening, or even if you are returning, be sure to follow us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for additional content, battle maps, and background details. We hope you are enjoying our adventure. Let's see what happens next. From Woodshead to the outer gates of Pathilia is a journey of at least 5 days by horse-drawn wagon, for about half of which the East Mornwood lies to the southwest, and for the latter half the enormous lakes and marsh take over. To the northeast of the road, for the entire 5-day journey, are the wilds of Pathilius. Although mostly hilly and with variegated forests, there are trees of great heights, large hillocks with many burrows, and small crevasses with cave systems. Immediately around the cities and towns, however, are only farms as far as the eye can see. The farms surrounding Woodshead, and using it as their major business center, extend for about a day's journey from the Woodshead gates. Similarly, for about 2 days from Pathilia, the farms begin again. But there is a stretch of open country of about 2 days' journey in total, for which the landscape is lonely, quiet, and dangerous. Here, the wilds of unexplored Pathilius grow unchecked and are filled with the beasts and creatures lurking day and night. In general, these beasts keep away from the roads because of the risk of flying arrows and swinging swords. The last of the Woodshead farms are marked by 30-foot watchtowers that sprinkle the periphery of the last farms, creating a barrier to the wilds. The group of travelers from Woodshead passed the last of those towers at first light this morning and have been traveling all day. They are moving towards Pathilia to tend to their urgent business with the king and a mind-flayer. Now, 2 days into their journey and at the halfway point of this lawless desolation of an unending greenscape, they decide to make camp for the night to rest.
Let's camp here.
Umgern pulls the wagon to a stop about an hour before the setting of Isavara. Theophania stops as well, and Inesel and Malaysia immediately hop down from the back and begin gathering wood and stones for a safe campfire. Inesel and Malaysia make survival checks. Both roll 12. They spend some time and have to scamper a bit off the road and into the woods, but eventually find sufficient fuel and stones. Umgern looks into the back of the covered wagon to see Fodinas impossibly snuggled between Case and Peace, a large pile of sleeping, comfortable fur. Their combined snores are deafening. He chuckles to himself. Umgern casts dancing lights. He pulls a small bit of witchwood from a small compartment in his amulet, mumbles a few words with some gesticulations of his fingers, and 4 small balls of light appear over the 3 sleeping beings. He begins bouncing the balls off their foreheads repeatedly until all 3 have blinked awake. Fodinas sits up suddenly, bouncing 2 of the balls of light off his head again. Peace and Case both awaken slowly and stretch their cat bodies at long, odd angles. Eventually, all 3 of them move out of the wagon and assist with the fire. Inesel has arranged the stones for optimal protection of the dry grass, and Malaysia has built a pile of logs and branches. Malaysia casts Create Bonfire on the pile. The campfire ignites easily, and the cool chill of the evening is quickly dissipated by the warmth. By this time, Theophania returns with 2 rabbits and a pheasant, which she begins cleaning and preparing for cooking over the spit that Malaysia has already set up.
I assume we will need to set up a night watch.
Case yawns and stretches again.
After I have eaten, I'll be happy to do so, as I feel quite rested.
We can take it in 4-hour shifts. Everyone should get a good night's sleep.
Inesel stokes the fire and smiles at everyone. The fire is crackling and burning brightly with the smell of roasting rabbit and pheasant wafting from the spit as Isvara vanishes below the horizon. So far from any town, the landscape is absolutely pitch black outside of the glow of the campfire. The party makes perception checks, DC 20, roll 3, 13, 16, 11, 23, 13, and 15. While everyone is preparing to eat, Peace suddenly stands up and looks around.
We are not alone.
They point towards the woods. Everyone quickly stands to join them and face the woods. A low, growling noise from just outside the firelight turns into a hooting roar as 2 large, whitish-gray beasts charge in from the night. They have beaked faces, fierce front claws, and appear to be covered in feathers.
Everyone rolls for initiative. Malaysia attacks with shortbow, targeting Owlbear 1.
rolls a 7 versus AC 13 for a miss. Malaysia excitedly fires a magical shot from his short bow from behind the others, but misses the creatures completely. Owlbear 1 attacks Case with its beak and claws, rolls a 10 versus AC 18 for a miss, rolls a 20 versus AC 18 for a hit with 21 slashing damage. The first creature moves with a roar and snap of its jaws towards Case, who was closest to the woods. Misses Case's arm, but swipes his chest aggressively with its foreclaw. Case shrieks in pain from the deep cut. Owlbear 2 attacks Umgurn with its beak and claws, rolls 27 critical versus AC 18 for a hit with 14 damage, rolls 14 versus AC 18 for a miss. The second feathered beast moves viciously towards Umgurn standing next to Case and lands a bite into his thigh with its powerful jaws, but consumed by the bloodlust, misses wildly with its claws. Peace uses Unarmed Strike on Owlbear 1, spends 1 key point to use Flurry of Blows, rolls 25 critical hit versus AC 13 for 9 damage, rolls 13 versus AC 13 for 7 damage, and rolls 10 versus AC 13 for a miss. Peace slides in next to Case and unleashes 3 key-enhanced punches into the ribs of the feathered creature, with harsh, unashamed fury, causing the creature to howl in pain. Umgurn attacks Owlbear 2 with his double-bladed scimitar twice, rolls 7 versus AC 13 for a miss, rolls 20 versus AC 13, 7 slashing damage. Umgurn, afraid for his young compatriots with these ferocious creatures attacking them, swipes wide with his double-bladed scimitar on his first pass, but lands a strike home on his backswing, slicing the creature's face. Case uses Second Wind as a bonus action and attempts to grapple Owlbear 2. Regains 11 hit points. Rolls a 26 strength check versus Owlbear 13 strength check. Owlbear is grappled. After the claw slash from the creature, Case takes a long, deep breath to regain some of his strength and health. He then leaps onto the creature's back, grappling it. Foodiness attacks Owlbear 2 with his short swords twice, rolls 25 versus AC 13 for 11 piercing damage and 5 sneak attack damage, rolls 28 critical hit versus AC 13 for 11 piercing damage. Foodiness slides next to Umgurn in flanking position and unleashes 2 vicious short sword swings on the owlbear, cutting deeply into its left shoulder and side. Inacel casts Healing Word on Case as a bonus action, moves into the space vacated by Case in front of Owlbear 2 and attacks with Scimitar. Rolls 5 hit points. Rolls 23 versus AC 13 for 8 damage. Inacel sees both Case and Umgurn have been injured, but casts a Healing Word onto Case, who seems in more danger atop the back of the owlbear. She then runs in and slashes at the owlbear's front legs with her scimitar, slicing one deeply. Theophania casts Hail of Thorns as a bonus action, attacks Owlbear 2 with her longbow. Rolls 18 versus Armor Class 13 for 9 piercing damage. Both owlbears make Dex saving throws DC 15, roll a 3 and a 2, taking 2 and 5 piercing damage from thorns. From the back, next to Malaysia, Theophania murmurs a few mystical forest words, and her arrow notched in her bow glows with the images of thorns. She launches an arrow at the second owlbear, striking it in the hindquarter and releasing a hail of small black thorns from the enchanted shaft, which pepper both owlbears. Malaysia casts Catapult on a large stone towards Owlbear 1, rolls a 15 Dex save versus DC 14, saves, no damage or effect. Malaysia, frustrated with his bow, resorts to his magic and launches a stone off of the side of the road into melee straight towards the closest owlbear, but it ducks its head and the stone zings by harmlessly. Owlbear 1 attacks Umgurn with Bite and Claw, rolls a 9 and a 17 versus AC 18, missing with both. The first feathered creature rears back its head and claws to return blows with Umgurn, but only just brushes his arm and leg, not harming him. Owlbear 2 attacks Case with Bite and Claws, rolls 16 and 12 versus AC 17, missing with both. Case's position on the back of the second owlbear makes it very difficult for the creature to land a bite or swipe with its claws, though it tries to anyway and misses. Peace attacks Owlbear 1 with Unarmed Strike twice, rolls 24 versus AC 13 for 4 bludgeoning damage, Rolls 9 versus AC 13 for a miss. Peace, still next to the owlbear that Case is grappling, attempts 2 more punches into the ribs of the owlbear, but only lands 1. Umgurn attacks owlbear 2 with double-bladed scimitar twice. Rolls a 6 versus AC 13 for a miss. Rolls a 23 versus AC 13 for 5 slashing damage. Umgurn, redoubling his efforts to stop the beasts, swings again wide with his double-bladed scimitar on his first pass, but again lands a solid blow on his backswing, hacking into the owlbear's shoulder. Case deals grappling damage to owlbear 1, attacks owlbear 1 with unarmed punch. Rolls 1 bludgeoning damage. Rolls 14 versus AC 13 for 13 bludgeoning damage. Case, holding tightly onto the owlbear's head, squeezes him with his arms, and then takes a swing, slamming his fist into its shoulder. Footiness attacks owlbear 2 with short sword, and then attacks owlbear 1 with short sword. Rolls 28 critical versus AC 13 for 12 damage, felling the beast. Rolls 15 versus AC 13 for 9 damage, felling the beast. Footiness can see that Case is struggling to injure the beast despite grappling it, and feels this fight must end quickly. He slashes at the first owlbear with his short sword and strike true as the beast collapses. The second owlbear looks quickly at its fallen mate, but cannot react before Footiness' second slice slits its throat. The party receives 200 experience points each.
These creatures appear to have been a mating pair.
Theophania breaks the silence of the frightening, unexpected encounter.
If that is the case, their den may be nearby. Orphaned cubs would be a shame. Inacel, will you join me in a quick search?
Inacel nods, and the two move off into the woods, following a trail left by the owlbears. Theophania makes a survival check, advantage aided by Inacel. Rolls a 15. Following the path of broken bushes and branches, as well as the easily spotted tracks in the grass and dirt, Theophania finds a large cave a quarter of an hour from where the attack occurred. Inacel, being smaller and more agile, quickly crawls inside and searches the cave. Inacel makes an investigation check. Rolls 14. Among the bones of many victims and the rags of their clothes, she finds copper, silver, and gold pieces, nearly 50 pounds worth, along with 9 gemstones. Inacel receives 26 gold pieces, 40 electrum pieces, 53 silver pieces, a large golden-brown tiger eye, a cloudy striated green malachite, a pale blue lapis lazuli, a striated green malachite, a cracked blue zircon, a radiant brown jasper, a flawed banded black onyx, a muddy gray-black hematite, and a deep red coral. She places the items in her backpack. She then carefully pulls out as many of the bones as she can and begins piling them up. Theophania understands the exercise and assists her in organizing them as best they can. After about an hour, the cave is empty and they have the partial skeletons of at least 6 creatures. Inacel and Theophania make medicine checks, roll 25 crit and 15. The skulls of all 6 are easily identifiable. After carefully studying the bones and taking the time to assemble them, they recognize that these are 3 humans, 1 kobold, 1 elf, and a tabaxi. They dig 6 equally deep and spaced graves and place the bones in them along with fresh flowers, some herbs, and a few shiny stones from Inacel's pocket. After burying them, Inacel produces flame and burns the den of the owlbear with herbs and flowers to cleanse it. Satisfied that there are no baby owlbears alone and starving, they return to the party. While Inacel and Theophania are away, the rest of the party examines the owlbears. Malaysia makes a nature check, rolls 12.
If I am not mistaken, the feathers of owlbears are quite useful, and I am pretty confident I can harvest them.
Malaysia begins plucking the most pristine feathers. Malaysia harvests 52 and 43 owlbear feathers in excellent condition.
I think the claws and the liver are also quite valuable, but I lack the skill to properly harvest the livers, and the claws look very damaged.
He frowns and moves back to the fire. Case moves over next to Malaysia, slightly salivating.
What about the meat? Can we eat it?
Fodinus walks over from behind the wagon, wearing nothing but a very tiny loincloth and carrying his 2 steely daggers that gleam in the firelight.
Yes, we can.
Fodinus makes a survival check, rolls 19. He begins skinning the owlbear and removing slabs of meat, obtaining 60 pounds of high-quality owlbear steaks. Case, Malaysia, Umgern, and Peace quickly discuss the obvious problem of the amount of meat that Fodinus is likely to produce and decide to construct a larger oven to cook the meat. They gather stones, rocks, wood, and leaves. Malaysia makes a smith's tools check, rolls 25. Using some supplies from the wagon and the gathered materials, Malaysia constructs an oven that has 2 shelves and enough room for 20 large pieces of meat. The others begin placing the meat, which Fodinus has sliced into steaks the thickness of his thumb, onto the racks. Once full, Malaysia seals it and ignites the fire underneath. He spends most of the next hour blasting the chamber with fire bolts to stoke the fire and rotating the meat after it is cooked. Once done, they have about 40 pounds of cooked owlbear, which Malays wraps in oilcloth and places inside his bag of holding. Malaysia then adds the rest of the meat to the chamber, seals it, and stuffs the bottom with leaves. After igniting it, it begins to smoke.
This will cure the rest of the meat, and it will keep for longer. If we had a nice full day of sun, we could make some jerky, I suppose. But I don't think we should linger too much beyond today, no?
He looks out into the dark woods fearfully. Umgern shakes his head.
No. I hope our journey doesn't require more food than this, but, of course, owlbear is certainly tastier than rations.
He smiles and moves over to the carcasses where Fodinus has finished up. Fodinus is drenched in blood. He smiles at Umgern and nods.
I think I need to find some water to clean up in.
Fodinus seems very pleased with the bloody drenching, but knows it may be off-putting for the rest.
Yes.
Umgern frowns deeply, concerned that water may not be in enough quantity to clean this mess. Inesel and Theophania emerge from the woods at about the same time as Fodinus begins looking for water. They explain that there is a small stream about 5 minutes' walk along the path that has a dammed area from some beavers that should be deep enough to submerge himself. He thanks them and quickly moves to the water. Inesel and Theophania move to the carcasses of the owlbears. Theophania makes a survival check with advantage aided by Inesel, rolls 27, natural 20. Working quickly, Theophania and Inesel remove the hide of the owlbears and lay them out flat on the ground. Inesel begins digging a large hole, assisted by Case and Peace, and buries the remainder of the carcasses with some herbs, flowers, and several shiny stones from her pocket. Theophania gathers long grass, sand, and uses some salt from her chest to cover the pelts in a layer of sand and salt, and then a layer of dry grass before she rolls them up.
We will have to drape these over the top of the wagon tomorrow, but they should dry quickly.
The group eats their fill of rabbit, pheasant, and owlbear before retiring for the evening. Near midnight, Fodinus returns to the camp to find almost everyone bedded down for the night and snoring loudly. Case is on watch with Peace curled up around his feet. He is eating another owlbear steak with a huge smile and gleaming eyes.
Thank you, brother, for this glorious meat. It has been a long time.
Fodinus nods down towards the tabaxi.
My feet were cold.
Case seems to go a bit purple, even in the darkness.
Well, you are most welcome for the meat, my friend.
Fodinus dries himself by the fire, redresses, and then bundles down for a long rest. The party takes a long rest. The following morning, the party rises early, has a quick breakfast mostly of leftover owlbear, packs up the wagons, and moves further along the road. Malaysia disassembles his oven and brings the usable parts with him in Theophania's wagon. Inesel spent several minutes gathering stones, flowers, and herbs, as she always does, and added them to the piles in the cart that are growing. After less than an hour of traveling, Ermgren slows the wagon and then halts without saying a word. Theophania also stops abruptly, causing Inesel and Malaysia to jolt forward and look up surprised. Umgern is staring ahead, off to the right side of the road. The rest of the group stares as well, including Peace, Case, and Fodinus, who peer out of the wagon.
There.
Umgern points a finger. As their eyes adjust in the early morning light to the shadows in the grass, it becomes clear that there is a small cave-like opening or burrow eruption on the side of the road. It looks quite fresh, as there are clods of dirt and large stones strewn ahead on the road and in the grass. Fodinus leans next to Umgern's ear.
What could have done that?
something I do not want to run into this early in the day.
Inacel makes a low, guttural, throaty noise, which normally would be heard commonly in the forests of any land, but as the noise came from the cart, Umgurn turns to look, which was Inacel's goal. She holds up one of the shiny stones in the cart. She points at a stone, makes a gesture to suggest magic, and makes a silent motion to throw. Umgurn nods. Inacel casts Magic Stone and makes a ranged attack. Rolls a 23. The magically charged stone flies through the air with a razor-sharp accuracy and strikes the opening of the burrow, making a clinking and clacking sound as it bounces off other stones, then fades as the stone bounces down the hole. The party watches silently for a response, including Theophania, who has her bow drawn already. After a minute, nothing happens. Umgurn lets out a long sigh and says in his normal voice,
I guess it's nothing, but let's be careful.
As the horses neigh at the start of their walk and Theophania moves forward, bow still in hand, 5 giant spiders emerge from the forest's edge, fangs chittering and making screeching sounds of hunger. Everyone rolls for initiative. Giant Spider E moves 30 feet towards the wagon, uses web to attack Umgurn. Rolls 24 versus AC 18. Umgurn is restrained. The giant spider closest to the mouth of the eruption streaks towards the party on its 8 bristled legs and makes it to within striking distance before launching a web through the air at Umgurn, which entangles him. Peace attacks Giant Spider A with their spear, then moves into melee with it. Rolls 26 critical for 10 damage. Peace gauges the spread of the spiders and thinks it's best to protect the horses, their likely interest. They hurl their spear towards the closest spider north of the wagon, striking it in the back, then leap from the cart and run up to it for melee. Fodinas attacks Giant Spider A with 2 dagger throws, then moves into melee with it. Rolls a 26 for 7 damage and an 11 for a miss. Fodinas follows the same logic as Peace, hurling each of his vicious daggers towards the nearest northern spider, one of which strikes it in the head, and then charges in with his short swords drawn. Theophania casts Hunter's Mark, targeting Giant Spider E, then attacks Giant Spider E with her longbow. Rolls 20 for 7 damage plus 5 marked damage. Seeing Umgurn restrained and his horses close to the oncoming spider, Theophania murmurs a few words. Her notched arrow glows briefly red as a faint red glow encircles the spider's head. She launches an arrow, striking it directly in the face. Inacel casts Magic Stone, attacks Giant Spider E with magic stones, then moves into melee with Giant Spider B. Rolls a 7, natural 1 for no damage. Inacel pulls a shiny stone from the pile in the wagon she's been collecting, murmurs a few words over it while twirling her fingers, igniting it with a magical aura, and then hurls it at the spider threatening the horses, but she misses. She leaps down from the cart and charges the second spider to the north with her scimitar drawn. Case attacks Giant Spider B with his spear, moves into melee with Giant Spider E, and uses his bonus action to perform Daunting Roar. Rolls a 26 for 11 damage. Spider rolls 20 versus DC 14 and saves. Case pushes past the entangled Umgurn, hurling his spear as he does at the spider Inacel is charging, striking it in the back. He lands on the ground in front of the horses and charges the spider that threatens them, roaring directly in its face, to which the spider responds by chittering with its fangs ominously. Giant Spider D moves into melee and attacks Case. Rolls a 20 for 10 damage. Case rolls a 9 con saving throw versus DC 11 and takes 3 poison damage. The giant spider near the cave and closest to the party charges into melee with Case, striking it with a poisonous bite and sinking its fangs into his arm. Malaysia casts Create Bonfire, centered on Giant Spider D and E. Giant Spider D and E roll a 20 and a 17 dex saving throw versus DC 14, taking no damage. Malaysia stands up in the wagon, murmurs a few words with some hand movements, and produces a large bonfire right behind the 2 spiders in melee with Case. They seem unaffected. He readies his shortbow. Umgurn attacks Giant Spider E with his hand crossbow. Casts Shield of Faith, targeting Case. Rolls 4, disadvantage restrained, missing. Umgurn, entangled in the spider's web, launches a hand crossbow shot shakily at the beast, but misses wide. He murmurs a few words while clutching his amulet, making a circle with a slash in the area, surrounding Case in a gleaming magical shield of faith. Giant Spider C moves into range, attacks Inacel with web, rolls 21. Inacel is restrained. The remaining spider by the cave charges towards Inacel and launches a web at her, covering her in the sticky threads. Giant Spider B attacks Inacel with bite, rolls a 12, advantage restrains, for a miss. The giant spider in front of Inacel is excited that his prey has been incapacitated and moves in for a bite, but Inacel manages to wiggle away enough to avoid it. Giant Spider A attacks Peace with a bite, rolls 19 for 7 damage. Peace makes a con saving throw of 7 versus 11 and is poisoned with 11 more damage, falling unconscious. The giant spider that Peace and Fodinas have engaged bites Peace in the thigh deeply, and the poison seeps into their veins, knocking them unconscious. Giant Spider E attacks Case with a bite and moves out of the range of the bonfire, but remains in melee range with Case. Rolls a 14 versus armor class 19 for a miss. The large spider threatening the horses that Case rushed to attack makes a vicious bite attack, but misses Case's arm by more than a foot. It chitters as it moves away from the fire, but is still face to face with Case. Peace makes a death save, rolls a 9. 1 failure, 0 successes. Peace lies unconscious on the ground next to Fodinas. Fodinas attacks Giant Spider A with short swords twice, rolls 13 for a miss and 19 for a hit for 10 piercing damage. The giant spider that knocked Peace unconscious takes 2 swipes from Fodinas' short swords, one of which slices through the spider's face and it falls to the ground. Theophania uses her bonus action to move Hunter's Mark to Giant Spider B. Attacks Giant Spider B with her longbow, rolls a 19 for a hit for 5 damage plus 4 Hunter's Mark damage. Theophania sees Inacel ensnared by the spider's web and turns her Hunter's Mark towards the threatening beast, striking it with a longbow shot. Inacel attacks Giant Spider B with Scimitar and Hungry Jaws, both disadvantage, restrained. Rolls a 14 for a hit for 9 damage, then a 10 for a miss, no damage. Inacel, slightly angered by the sticky webs that restrain her, slashes at the looming spider, striking it across the side with her scimitar, but missing with her lunging bite as the spider falls dead from the scimitar slash. Case attacks Giant Spider E with his spear, two-handed, uses Second Wind to regain hit points, rolls an 8 for a miss, regains a 5 total hit points. Case's spear returns to his hands and he grabs it with both and lunges towards the giant spider but misses. He takes a deep breath and regains some composure and health. Giant Spider D attacks Case with bite, then moves out of range of bonfire, still in melee with Case, rolls a 15 for a miss. Seeing Case thrust at the other spider engaged with him, the newly arrived spider makes another bite attempt but misses. It also scurries away from the bonfire but remains in melee with Case. Malaysia casts Catapult, targeting a 5-pound stone on the side of the road towards Giant Spider C. Spider's dex save is 9 versus 14, a fail, takes 13 bludgeoning damage. Malaysia, still in the back of Theophania's cart, sees the far spider moving towards the group and casts Catapult on a large stone on the side of the road, sending it crashing into the spider's face. Umgern casts Toll the Dead on Giant Spider E. Giant Spider Wisdom saving throw 4, fails, takes 12 necrotic damage. Umgern, still restrained, murmurs a few words and manages to maneuver his hands, causing the sound of a loud, tolling bell which casts necrotic energy at the injured spider engaged with Case, crippling it with damage. Giant Spider C attempts to recharge its web, moves into melee with Inacel and makes 1 bite attack. Rolls 2, does not recharge. Rolls 23, advantaged restrained, versus 19 for 6 damage. Inacel fails wisdom saving throw with a 3 for 14 damage, falls unconscious. The furthest spider, unable to launch a web, charges into melee with Inacel and bites at the still restrained lizard folk, sinking its teeth into her side and injecting poison, causing her to fall unconscious. Giant Spider E attempts to recharge its web, attacks Case with a bite, rolls a 6, web recharges, rolls a 10 for a miss. The giant spider, who is struggling on his last legs next to Case, takes another bite at Case but misses. Peace makes a death save, rolls a 17, 1 success, 1 failure. Fodinas moves into melee with Giant Spider C and attacks with short swords twice. Rolls a 12 for a miss and 27 for a hit, doing 11 damage. Fodinus moves quickly to the next spider that just downed Inicel and slashes twice with his short swords, hacking off a leg. Theophania attacks Giant Spider C with main hand short sword, moves into melee with Giant Spider E, attacks Giant Spider E with offhand short sword. Rolls a 24 for 8 damage, rolls a 21 for 7 damage. Theophania is face to face with the giant spider next to Fodinus and slashes it with her short sword, bringing it down. She moves to the spider fighting with Case and slashes again, bringing it down as well. Inicel makes a death saving throw. Rolls a 9. 1 failure, 0 successes. Case attacks Giant Spider D with unarmed punch, uses an action surge to attack Giant Spider B with spear two-handed. Rolls a 13 for a miss, rolls a 26 for a hit for 6 damage. Case punches at the last spider but misses. Frustrated, he grabs his spear in both hands and thrusts it into the spider's abdomen, sinking it deeply. Giant Spider D attacks Case with a bite, rolls 14 for a miss. With the spear sticking from his abdomen, the last spider tries to bite Case's arm, but misses. Malaysia casts Catapult, targeting Giant Spider D with a large stone. Spider's dex saving throw rolls 4, failure, taking 13 damage. Still in the back of Theophania's cart, Malaysia targets another large stone on the side of the road, which whizzes towards the last giant spider and explodes when it hits his abdomen. Umgern casts Toll the Dead on Giant Spider D. Spider rolls an 11 wisdom save versus DC 14, fails, taking 5 necrotic damage. Umgern repeats his tolling assault on the last spider with another tolling echo, crippling it, though it's still up. Fodinus moves into melee with Giant Spider D and attacks with a short sword. Rolls 20 for 7 damage. Fodinus sprints to the last spider and swings violently with his short sword, decapitating the spider's head from its abdomen. All of the beasts have fallen. Umgern uses Lay on Hands for 5 hit points each to Inicel and Peace to remove the poisoned condition. Peace and Inicel each drink a potion of healing. Inicel regains 5 hit points, Peace regains 7 hit points. Malaysia and Theophania stabilize Inicel and Peace. Theophania removes 2 potions of healing from Inicel's bag, while Umgarn lays on hands on each of them, healing them to consciousness. When they are both conscious, Case pulls Peace into an embrace with small tears forming in his large cat eyes.
We are all right, Mitra.
The party receives 150 experience points each.
This hole or cave or burrow is very concerning.
Umgern walks towards the hole with Malaysia, who has his short sword drawn. Umgern makes an investigation check, aided by Malaysia, advantage, rolls a 19. He studies the area immediately around the hole and ventures down it a few feet. After a few moments, he and Malaysia return to the group. Umgern makes a survival check, rolls 14.
I suspect that this hole was made by a Kruthik, an adult in fact, if I am not mistaken. These are a hive creature of the Underdark that are known to burrow into Pathilias, but they do not venture to the surface. Based on these small tracks, I would guess it was an adult with several young Kruthik. The smaller ones are likely what pulled the spiders to the road as easy prey. But what made the Kruthik burrow out here in the first place?
Umgern continues to study the area. While Umgern is investigating, Fodinus collected the empty potion flasks from Peace and Inicel and moved next to Theophania.
Say, Theo, my dear lady, would you mind terribly collecting some spider venom for me?
Theophania looks at him slightly sideways, frowns a bit, and takes the vials.
And what are you going to do with spider venom?
Theophania crosses her arms over her chest with a vial in each hand.
You never know when it might come in handy, and Inicel is an herbalist. Perhaps she can make some anti-venom in case we run into some more of these things.
Fodinus smiles broadly, nodding his head vigorously. Fodinus makes a deception check versus Theophania's insight check, rolls a 12 versus a 20.
I will collect the venom and give it to Inicel.
She moves over to each spider in turn. Theophania makes a nature check aided by Inicel, advantage, rolls 5 successes, 16, 21, 19, 15, and 17, and no failures at DC 15. Theophania sets to work milking the venom from the 5 spiders, as well as collecting silk from their spinnerets. She hands Inicel the 2 flasks, which each hold the equivalent of 7 vials of spider venom, as well as 10 pounds of spider silk.
Excellent.
Fodinus recovers his steely daggers from the corpse of one spider.
I am going to harvest some spider meat. As you may or may not know, it's quite a delicacy in some cultures.
Fodinus makes 5 nature checks to harvest meat, DC 10. Rolls 14, 12, 11, 4, and 7. 3 successes and 2 failures. Fodinus sets to work butchering the spiders, which have been fairly heavily damaged. After working for a while, he has a pile of 36 pieces of spider meat weighing 144 pounds. The group look on with a bit of disdain, but Fodinus simply smiles, slices each piece of meat into thin cuts, and packs it in salt and oilcloth from the wagon. When he's done, he adds it to his bag. Case, having heard Umgurn's pronouncement about the burrow, set off into the woods with Peace. Umgurn looks quite distraught, and both Inicel and Theophania consider going after them. Fodinus looks up from his work.
Let those 2 go alone. It will be good for them.
Case and Peace make survival checks. Roll an 8 and a 21. Case can barely focus on the path ahead as he keeps looking at Peace with concern and fear over the tabaxi's recent brush with death. He doesn't seem to see much other than the tracks of the spiders near the road. Peace notes a trail through the forest that was clearly taken by the spiders. They point quietly and begin walking. Case and Peace make stealth checks. Roll an 11 and a 19. They begin moving through the forest, following the trail that Peace has identified easily, though Peace moves quietly, barely disturbing the bushes and trees around him. Case moves a bit more slowly and occasionally causes a bush to rustle, but maintains the quiet, his attention focused on Peace. After 15 minutes or so, they enter a small grove with large amounts of spider silk strewn from trees and across the ground. The canopy of the trees is almost completely covered in spider silk, blocking out the rays of Isvara easily. Peace points towards the middle of the clearing where the silk is thickest. They move closer and peer inside a large burrowed bowl of dirt. Case and Peace make investigation checks. Advantage time. Roll a 15 and a 14. Although nothing obvious stands out, they decide to spend 10 minutes or so rooting around in the nest and then find some items that must have belonged to previous victims, including coins. Peace receives 45 gold pieces, 206 silver pieces, 234 copper pieces, a gold locket, a silver ring, a dagger with a hematite, malachite, and moss agate stone inlay in the blade, hilt, and knob, a short sword, some horse tackle, and a holy symbol. There are a few bones here and there, but nothing identifiable. They gather the items and begin to leave the nest. From a nearby tree covered in spider silk, a few small spiders, the size of rats, begin emerging slowly, and then moving off to various parts of the forest. The tree they emerge from has a very large hole from which they were crawling, which is now empty. Case and Peace make investigation checks and perception checks. Roll a 19 and a 1, and a 20 and a 6, natural 1. Inside the hollow tree, in addition to a few small spiders, Case and Peace see the hilt of a sword barely visible a foot or so down into the hollow. Case looks at Peace and they both smile. Case reaches down into the hole and grabs the hilt. Case makes a strength check and a stealth check at disadvantage. Rolls a 19 and a 15. With a silent but forceful tug, Case pulls the sword from the hollow tree. It is a long sword and, despite being immersed in spider filth within a tree, is gleaming and sparkling as if it were just made yesterday. Case and Peace make arcana checks. Roll a 4 and a 3. Although neither of them can tell if this sword might be magical or even valuable, they decide it's best to take it with them. As they turn to leave the clearing, a few large spiders have emerged from the woods, 2 of which are dragging some sort of creature that they've wrapped in silk towards the burrow. Case and Peace make nature checks. Roll a 12 and a 4. Although Peace can really make out nothing, Case gets the impression that the beast in the web is some sort of reptile, but not a normal one. They look at each other soundlessly and move quickly back towards the road as quietly as possible. Back at the roadside scene, Case and Peace report what they have found and show the sword to the group, along with the gold locket, silver ring, dagger, short sword, horse tackle, and holy symbol. Malaysia makes an arcana check. Rolls 18.
Well, the locket, ring, dagger, short sword, tackle, and holy symbol do not appear to be magical, although they are really nice pieces. But the sword? Well, find. This is certainly a magical longsword of some type, and I'd venture to guess it can do some real damage. I'd have to spend more time with it to know for sure.
Malaysia takes the sword in hand, intending to begin his identify ritual. Umgurn holds up both hands.
No time for that now. We had barely been traveling an hour when these creatures attacked, and in the daylight. Fledinus, if you are finished with those carcasses, let's pack them into this hole and have Malaysia torch it. The stench of the spider bodies should drive away any underdark creatures. Then we can fill it with stones.
The group spends another half an hour completing this task, and when done, the burrow is now just a pile of stones with tendrils of smoke occasionally floating up from it. It is now mid-morning.
Let's get going. We need to make the watchtowers of Pathilia before nightfall. I don't care to have any additional issues today.
Umgurn's face is one of deep concern, and he watches the woods constantly as they set off. With everything packed in the wagons, Inisel lays down in Theophania's cart for a short rest, and Peace lays down in the wagon for a short rest. Malaysia casts his identify ritual on the longsword found by Case to determine its properties entirely, sitting next to the sleeping Inisel. Peace rolls 2 hit dice and regains key. Hit points now at maximum. Inisel rolls 2 hit dice. Hit points now 16 of 20. Case drinks a potion of healing from Inisel. Hit points now at maximum. Malaysia casts Identify on the sword. After completing his short rest studying the sword and casting Identify, Malaysia hands the sword to Case.
My dear friend, this is a dancing longsword. The word it answers to is Balar. My understanding is that you will need to attune to this sword, should you choose to, and then it will answer to the word and attack creatures for you at a distance. Since you are an unarmed fighting master, having a weapon, sort of like your spear, that you can use in battle while keeping your hands free might be a real advantage. You could also try to sell it. However, I have to tell you, this is a very rare item. I would imagine it is a known sword in this kingdom, and should you advertise that you want to sell it, someone may come looking to claim it. Perhaps a relation of the one killed by the spiders.
Case admires the sword, asks Malaysia what he has to do to attune to it, and then begins a short rest himself to complete the attunement process. Case attunes to Dancing Longsword. The first watchtowers of Pathilia come into view about an hour before the setting of Isvara on day 3 of the journey. The clash with the spiders has left the group shaken by the fight, as well as disturbed by the subsequent discovery. Umgurn and Case discuss the spider's nest and the reptilian creature Case thinks he saw, which leads Umgurn to believe the spiders were hunting the fresh meat of Kruthik. Everyone was recovering physically, but the near-death experience has put a new lens on their lives. As the wagon and Theophania's cart passes the first tower, a guard waves from the closest one and then crosses his arms across his chest. Umgurn returns the gesture.
It is a local custom. It means we are all loved.
Owlbears, giant spiders, and Kruthik excluded?
Malaysia makes the same gesture awkwardly.
Well, exactly.
Umgurn sighs, looking at Peace and Inisel. He must apologize to them at some point before the day ends. Only a few minutes from the watchtowers, an inn appears along with several stalls selling food. The wagon is on the crest of a hill, and to the west, all they can see are farms in every direction. Vodinus grabs Malaysia's shoulder, smiles, and pulls him over to the stalls while Umgurn navigates the group to the inn.
There is this inn here, and then another tomorrow. We should sleep more soundly this evening.
Umgurn pulls the horses up in front of the watchtower inn. Vodinus greets the 3 people selling food and smiles with Malaysia at his side.
My friend here and I have a load of owlbear steaks and giant spider steaks. Would you be interested?
Albert, how much do you have?
A confident little dwarf walks from behind his cart. The other 2 vendors also look on with interest.
35 pounds roasted and 20 pounds smoked.
Malaysia announces proudly. Malaysia makes a persuasion check versus the vendors, rolls a 20 versus a 7, 18, and a 20.
Aye, 100 gold pieces for the lot, young firebrand.
The dwarf walks close to the genasi, watching his hair of fire dance with excitement. Malaysia looks at Vodinus, who smiles and nods in return.
Deal.
Malaysia begins extracting the meat from his bag.
And the spider meat.
Fodinus looks at them, nodding to suggest they should want it. The dwarf shies away from the question, but a tiefling woman wearing a long purple cotton dress cut low across her chest walks up. Fodinus makes a persuasion check versus the tiefling. Rolls 22, natural 20 versus 16.
This, I want the spider meat, but only if it is fresh today and salted.
She sneers, expecting that her expectations won't be met.
Of course, my lady. 36 pieces, about 140 pounds.
Fodinus smiles and bows deeply.
Excellent. 100 gold pieces for that, Jace.
She nods, folding her arms across her chest, indicating there is no room for negotiation.
Yes, ma'am.
Fodinus also begins removing the meat from his bag. The tiefling begins tapping her temple and whispering. Fodinus and Malaysia rejoin the party, who move into the inn for the night. Malaysia and Fodinus each gain 100 gold pieces. They sell all of their meat. Inacel adds giant spider to her wild shape potential. Thank you for visiting Engedrian. Don't forget to find us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for additional content, battle maps, and background details. We hope you're enjoying our adventure. We can't wait to hear what happens next.